Hey guys, welcome back. I've partnered up with my buddy Brett, who is really good at making plans. In fact, we made a whole website just for my plans called Make with Duresta. And in this video, I'm going to make this cabinet. This cabinet is got multiple uses. For me, I'm going to use it to store all my leather tools. It's been several videos over the last 12 years that I made for leather tools, and this is the most recent iteration. This is the set of plans you're going to get. If you have a CNC machine, you can certainly make the bones of this project on the CNC machine like I'm going to do. But you could also make it on a table saw, and instead of doing the tab and slot that I'm showing you, you could also dado and table saw out these cross members, or these horizontal draw cavities, I guess you could call them. Here, these are being cut of the sides, and it's going to accept the horizontals, which will carry the drawers. And this is going to be the skeleton of this project. I have a 5x10 shop bot that I've had now since I think about 2017, and I love this thing. It is an absolute monster. And of course, I'm holding everything together with Type-On. I use several different types of Type-On. Right now I'm just using the regular, I think it's a Type-On 2 or maybe the Type-On 1. It just happened to be what was right there. And this is a snug fit on the CNC machine. And I put the clamps on it, but I also put some screws in it to pull it together where I think it needs it. The one thing I like about the CNC machine is that you get a nice sturdy construction and everything is hidden. All this CNC construction is going to be completely disguised in the final result. Those tabs are a touch proud, so I use my belt sander to get them down. And now this is, I'm not sure what this is. I jokingly call it banana wood because nobody knows what kind of species of wood it is. It's from Home Depot. It turns into this sort of yellowy, ugly wood, but it is a clean, consistent, no knot. Best thing I could find at Lowe's, actually. I think I got this. And there's a little transition from the warehouse shop to the backyard shop. So now I'm in the new barn shop that Kyle and David built. And here I'm putting together the sides that cover up that construction. It is that weird veneered plywood I get at Lowe's. And in this case, I'm using Type-On 3 because that's what's sitting around right there. And I have this 23 gauge battery operated nailer, which is a godsend. I use it all the time for everything. I use it to stick notes on the wall. And I'm painting the veneer because it is quite literally microns thick, and I'm trying to trap it in a little bit for the upcoming work where I'm going to router it. So I give it a coat of poly, it's a Total Boat Gleam, just to trap in that veneer to hold it in place. And what I'm doing now is I'm starting to make the parts for the drawer, and this is 1 inch thick. It's about 7/8 inch thick walnut that I had, and so every drawer side and every drawer front gets cut out of one piece, then split. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm making the heights roughly. I'll always tune it later. I always get it like 102%. So I always have a little bit of room to trim off later. These are the tall drawers. So the five skinny drawers are just under 3 inches, and these drawers are just under 7 inches. And so to cut these in half, I could use the bandsaw, but I never have luck on the bandsaw. I just always use the table saw. And now it leaves me with a 1 3/4 inch piece in the middle, which I hand saw. And just use a little stumpy little cross-cut hand saw that I had there. And that's how I'm able to split these 1 inch thick pieces in half. And of course it's a little rough and ready, so we take them over to the planer. This is an old Sears planer I got when I did the TV show Hammered, if anybody remembers back that far. That was in 2005. It's a 20 inch wide, and it's pretty badass. I could probably sharpen the blades at this point, which I've never done. But it works pretty well. Those small pieces come through with no snipe on them, which is incredible. Now I'm putting the back on, and this is important to mark where the center line is between each one of those horizontal drawer cavities, and it'll become more important later. Years ago, I did a video where I made, I guess you might call it an apothecary cabinet, but I really used it for machining stuff, machining bits and various pieces. And one lesson I learned from that after it sat around for many years, it's been almost 10 years since I made that. All the drawers get filled up with heavy stuff, and if you open and close and open and close the drawers, you start pounding the back out. This is why I painted that. So when I router it, the paint, the clear coat, holds the fibers together. But with the drawers opening and closing, you end up pounding the back off. So it's really important to secure the back. And later I'll put screws. Now this is the way I get all those faces nice and flat. That is a 20-inch sanding disc on that piece of wood. And I use that just as a mobile sanding flat face, kind of like a surface plate. Now I'm making all my edge banding out of walnut. And my edge banding, in this case, I didn't really have enough oak. I didn't really have enough walnut to do everything in one or the other. So I mixed it all up in different woods. And I'm happy with the way it looks. I'm really happy with this dark wood accent in the drawers. And then the front facing, which I'm sure you've seen on the thumbnail, the front facing is going to be white oak. Now, when I cut these cross members for the edge banding, I make them a little bit longer and I keep a file. So you see me checking them, and sometimes they fit perfect, sometimes they're a little long, but I always make sure they're at least a little long so that I could file them to fit. And there's my 23 gauge nailer. If you haven't had or don't use a 23 gauge nailer, it's incredibly useful, and you never see the nails, they just disappear. I'm just using a flush cut saw to get rid of the extended pieces there. Just using that file just to get a nice little flat surface for that. More edge banding. This is going to have a tray at the top, so I made that edge banding a little bit thicker in the event it might take some abuse, which most likely it won't. Now I'm making my kick plate. You'll notice in the plans this is a separate piece that you could add to the bottom. You could certainly incorporate it into the sides if you're inclined, which is how I used to make cabinets. And in this case, I'm using a bit of veneer. I split up that piece of walnut, and I'm just using some bits of poplar. So that's why I'll have the walnut facing out, and then the poplar creates all the structure. Now in this case, I'm just gluing everything with a bit of nails. If this was a client job, I certainly would have some more mechanical connectivity there. Glue works great and nothing's ever let go, but I would certainly sleep better if this was in a client's house with screws in there. But again, it's for me personally, so if it breaks, I'll fix it. And this is going to be the front edge of our tray top. And I tap that into position. I leave everything just a little proud so that later on I could sand it into submission. Everything will be nice and squared up. And this is going to be the back of our tray top. Tray topper. I'm using Type Bond 3 because it dries a little bit darker. I'm back with that flattening sandpaper block to get all of the edge banding nice and smooth and flat in the same plane. Now it's important if you have all this edge banding to just break the edge a little bit, and I have that sanding block where the sandpaper goes all the way to each edge. And considering that open tray at top, you're going to see all the way into it. I wanted to get rid of the construction or the bones and hide it with a 1/16 inch piece of veneer, which it's important once you get the glue on it, it starts curling up, so it's important to get a lot of clamps on there. Now this is my drawer sides. This is to show you up close and personal how I do my finger joints. That is just a piece of wood glued to my sled. And when I glue it down, I use another piece of wood that's the exact same thickness of the blade, and the stop peg is also the same thickness of the blade. I push my sled up beside the blade, and I put that spacer beside the blade, and then I glue the peg to the crosscut sled. And it works nearly perfect every time. When I don't need it, I just bang it off with the hammer, sand it, and then when I need it, I just CA glue it back into place. In my old shop in the city, I had a slice in my crosscut sled where I just slide a piece in, but it got beat up and it kind of broke off. So in this case, maybe I could do something like that with a piece of steel or something. But now I'm working on my crosscut sled because it could take some glue and I wouldn't be too concerned about it. And I could also use it to square. So when I put these finger jointed drawer bodies together, I use thin CA glue. I use the finger joints and thin CA glue. The reason I use the thin CA glue, it's also from Type Bond, it's a Type Bond product, because it stains the wood, and later on when I paint it, it's the same stain. It doesn't show up if I used a water-based glue or a PVA. I'd have to wash it all out. But with the CA glue, those finger joints are so tight and the tolerance is so tight, the CA glue makes them lock together, and then any staining you see from the CA glue just becomes completely incorporated into the finish. It's the same color as the finish. So it's a little trick I do. Some people probably think it's blasphemy, but that's okay. And I have a nice snug finger joints, and then I squirt a little thin CA glue in those joints, and then I'll make sure everything's squared up, because in a couple of seconds it really starts to kick, and then you can't change it unless you put a hard square bottom in it, which I'm about to do. And there you can see all the frames, all 7, 2 fat, 5 skinny. Now it's time to clean them up. And here, this is my 32-inch Oliver sander that I got from Andrew Alexander a couple years ago. It is one of my favorite tools. It's in my warehouse shop, which I affectionately call Three-Phase Alley. It's where all my three-phase machines live, next to my American Rotary phase converter. And that machine, if those wheels touch the ground, you could probably ride that to California on one charge. It is unbelievable and extremely dangerous with the new sanding disc on it. And I'm able to get all those drawers all chooched up, and they all fit nice and tight. Now it's time to make the drawer bottoms. I'm using an MDF veneer, walnut veneer MDF, 1/2 inch thick. It makes the drawers a little heavy. And if you don't have one of these cross-cut sleds from SawStop, you're doing yourself a disservice. It makes your cross-cuts nice, like as if you had a European slide table saw. It's the closest thing we can get here in America. And the drawer bottoms all needed to be kind of tuned in. Like I said before, I cut them all to about 102% the size, and then I tuned them all in off camera, and they all fit pretty perfectly. I guess at least 75% of them just drop right in. But with a little bit of persnickety problems with the finger joints, 1 or 2 of the drawers had to be a little bit shorter. I had to redo the finger joints off camera. But it's only a 1/4 inch shorter than it was. So. And now I plopped them in with some glue from, I think, Type On 3. And I put a bunch of little 23 gauge nails in there. And I sanded off all the disc sanding marks with the palm sander, only on the extreme long sides, because the front's getting a draw face and the back's never going to be seen. Now painting the cabinet up again, getting everything nice and clean looking, and I'm really loving the color break between the walnut and the banana veneer, and you could see how nice the drawers start to really pull together. It's touch and go when you're making the finger joints and you're getting blowout and you don't know what's going to show, and everything starts to seem like it's not working out. But then all of a sudden, boom, you got 6 beautiful drawers in front of you, 7. And now it's time for the drawer faces. And in this case, I'm using some beautiful white oak that was left over from a project I did in the beginning of the summer for a client. And this is a really beautiful, clean cut piece. This is like premium, and it smells great. And just using my cross-cut sled. Again, doing that same trick where you have the block on your fence. You don't want to trap that between the fence and those long pieces. It gets precarious. So you just get your mark, cut it, and move it out of the way. And then you have some airspace around your parts. And then I put a little round over. That might be like an 1/8 inch round over. I want the drawers to just look a little puffy sticking out of the drawer areas. And that's my notorious router sled, which I always get some beef over. And I'm just using the quick and thick to glue everything in place. And to be honest, once I glued these all in place and I set my handles, I pulled it open and I put some pin nails in from the inside just to make sure. But it was about an hour later when I began to fiddle with the handles, and everything stayed in place for the most part. And the bottom drawers were a little finicky, but I was able to just use my pin nailer to keep everything in place. I'm also was in a rush, as you can imagine. So you see the bottom popped off a little bit. And now I'm going to put the handles on. So I just want to wet everything with poly. And these are $2 a piece at the hardware store. These are like Ace crap. brand. I spray painted them gold. And now I'm just using a little wet rag, wet with some Gleam, just to get anything that needed to be wet down with Gleam. Now this is what I was talking about before. Now that the drawers have some girth to them with that 1/2 inch bottom and anything else I might put into them, you want to make sure that the back isn't going to push off. So that's why I put some screws right where they're needed most. And now I'm just using some furniture wax to really chooch up the drawers so they push in and out. One thing I didn't show you, I put a couple of little sliders on either side of the drawer. The drawers ultimately ended up being about 1/8 of an inch gap on either side. So just a couple of thou strip of wood on either side keeps the bottoms centered, keeps the drawers centered. You notice there the furniture pads, I cut them square on the corners on the bandsaw so that they fit up into the corner of your piece of furniture. This is just a bit of leather from Weaver. It's going to make a nice little top. Now this really is going to become my leather station. I've had so many, my Walmart toolboxes full of all my parts, all my various leather parts. And it's not a Duresta product without my name on it. Lately I've been dating everything. And that's going to be the top tray where my most used tools are going to go. I've been making these leather bags and I've been using a lot of rivets. So there's my rivet tray. That's my shoemaker's nail tray. And these are my punches, all my various extra rivets. I'm using copper rivets, number 12s and number 9s. And this is all some of the longer term storage stuff. My zippers, my sewing drawer, some tools. Those wooden cavities keep needles in them. These are all my skiving tools, my punch spots. And this really, honestly, is going to be coming very handy. I really think I need wheels on it, but I'll do that off camera. I'm really happy with this. If you think you might want to make one of these, go download the plans. There's lots of other plans there available. Everything's really affordable. And thank you for the support over the 12 years. Some of you guys have been around since the very beginning, and I just want to say that I really appreciate it. Love and respect, and good luck with your projects.